Chapter 19. Who needs a burner phone in Thailand? The following is why I can't go to certain places in Bangkok. I wrote a short story about it for a creative writing postgraduate portfolio. It got me into the course, which I didn't end up doing as the university fees were too high. This whole event provided me with more than a university entrance though. It taught me how to move in Bangkok when presented with danger. Enjoy the intermission. Phone. Who needs a burner phone in Thailand? The answer to that question came and went as I sat in his one-room dingy flat that he shared with his friend. I also fought judgment. How would I know how pro football players from Guinea lived? I didn't. History. That's not true. There was Sammy. He was a football player from Ivory Coast who'd relocated to Russia as a 13-year-old. Who wouldn't want to get to know Sammy? He played striker for a Thai province team employed on a short-term contract to help them win, which he did. He lived in the team accommodation in a nearby town. What was meant to be just a hookup turned into a full weekend. It was my last weekend in Pattaya. I was also finishing up a short-term contract as a teacher. Sammy was happy to be around me and away from it. So I understood foreign players didn't earn much and lived simply. Al-Mami. There was another player before Sammy, this one. Al-Mami didn't act like a player in that sense. We talked a lot before meeting and we didn't hook up immediately, just nice dates. He was 20 years my junior. I know I attract young men, in fact they'd been my go-to for many years now. Uncomplicated and non-judgmental about my lack of life skills, i.e. marriage, motherhood or successful career in lieu of that. So much experience with the millennials assured that I was no idiot when it came to sorting out quickly what they want from me. There were no broken hearts. It worked well. Romance. I was cynical about it ever since I'd stopped drinking 4 years ago. Ironically, hangovers make you lonely and yearn for a partner while preventing you from keeping one. My sober philosophy on life was not so much pessimistic, more realistic now. Love was fleeting, enjoy it while it lasts. Feel the heartbreak but keep the suffering to a time limit. Another always came along. Be open to suggestions, and Al-Mami had suggestions. On our second date, he couldn't understand why I didn't seek permanent togetherness foreverdom. I explained, as I always did, to very little protest from lovers, that my choice in younger men meant that I couldn't expect to hold them. It wasn't fair to either of us. Even if they didn't want kids, they always had a mother who eventually would. A sensible woman avoids that whole landmine-filled area. Al-Mami was an orphan and a sober Muslim. Romance scam. It's definitely something to consider. I looked for signs at the time. Could he be into me for money, a visa, or both? I'd watched horror stories, and as much as my solidarity with 40-plus women on the dating game made me identify with them, the "why did you trust so much" question arose in me. I feel guilty now. It's never as simple as that. I was satisfied with his explanation that he was playing for the Thai league and working in the gem industry for a relative during off-season, so didn't need to return to his home country like Sammy. I had an ear open for any requests for money or anything else I wasn't prepared to give. I was safely skeptical. I just wanted a short-term love affair, nothing more. Questions. We'd been on a couple of dates, some fumbled sex in a Khao San hotel room. I put his inexperience down to his faith. When I decided to do a cursory internet search, his Facebook profile ignited my suspicions immediately. A picture of a baby with congratulatory messages below. He's supporting a family back in Guinea, I figured. This would have been fine had he initially admitted it. Sammy had. So I ghosted because no matter how short-term, no one likes a liar. In hindsight, asking him straight wouldn't have solved that problem. Wanted. On my return to Australia, I felt guilty about the ghosting and decided to contact Al-Mami. Perhaps I wanted an answer, maybe some closure. I also figured I was far enough away from him to not get sucked into his careful, polite, and let's face it, unusually nice treatment. Al-Mami explained the baby away as a niece, quickly forgave my ghosting and proceeded to maintain regular contact with me for the next month. It was welcomed and I felt wanted. Any man could learn so much from this approach. Honestly, it doesn't take much to keep a woman happy. Closure. It was now a different type I was after. Could he be an option? Could I realise my dream of living in Bangkok and teaching, with a boyfriend thrown in as a bonus? I knew if it didn't work relationship-wise, I'd still be fulfilling a plan. I wanted to work out what his intentions were to put closure to my understandable suspicions that he was into me for something other than a relationship. He was thrilled that I was coming to visit. He'd never suggested it. I sometimes wonder how long he would have kept in contact with me if I hadn't decided to go back. Success. 2 months after coming home from the teaching contract, I returned for a week in Bangkok with Almami. It passed nicely, staying in hotel rooms with him because there was no privacy at his place. He introduced me to an Australian woman, a teacher married to a Guinean friend of his, who said she could help me find a job. She also reiterated the niece story. I felt this could work. I'd be stupid to not give it a shot. Almami differed in so many ways to every single man I'd ever met. The non-drinking thing for starters. And of course, his survival in a different country with a whole network of other African people who welcomed me. It didn't seem too good to be true. Besides, I was used to loving and leaving men, and I knew I was punching above my weight with him. Why not enjoy it while it ran its course? Return. It was my second last night in Thailand when I finally got to see where and how Almami lived. The block of flats was home to many other African men and women and some Thai-African mixed couples. I sat on Almami's bed while he chatted with his flatmate and another young Guinean man who'd just flown in from Myanmar. Usually I didn't mind, but this time I felt odd as I listened to them speaking their language. Ignored. I became highly aware that the Myanmar friend barely acknowledged me. I felt something hard underneath me on the bed. I briefly looked at the small Nokia push-button phone, giving no indication I'd found it. Suddenly I was no longer ignored. They all looked at me and asked if I was ready to go. This felt suspicious. If I'd have known what to be suspicious of. We were on the move to Khao San. Back to our hotel room, I thought. Saviour. Outside the flats as we were climbing onto our motorcycles, I said goodbye to his friends, not realising they were going to follow. No one cleared that up either. I smiled warmly at Myanmar friend and he looked down, also smiling, though in an attractively shy way. Suspicion left me. In Khao San we regrouped and Almami said we were all going to meet some friends. I was genuinely tired and said I was going back to the room. He had his friends to hang with now. He put his arm around me and wouldn't take no for an answer. I was angry. In that moment the Myanmar friend took off into the crowd. A strong urge told me to use this distraction and follow him. Once in the crowd, I ducked down low so Almami couldn't see me and took my own direction. Flight. I knew the road well and took off up between the market stalls where I could move quicker. I heard Almami yelling behind me. I stopped and turned around. He was furiously yelling at me about leaving as we stood in the middle of a Thai woman's stall. She looked from me to him. I stepped towards him and said in a low growl, "You do not make a scene here." I took off again, this time down the other side of the road. An alleyway appeared that I'd never seen before. I took it and fortuitously it didn't dead end, instead spitting me out close to my hotel. I felt sheer relief that I'd insisted on paying for hotels, so I had the key. Fight. I still didn't know what I was running from. I just knew I'd done the right thing. Almami rang when I was on the rooftop. My instinct was to yell at him. "You have a burner phone? You were forcing me to go somewhere against my will? Do you think I'm just another dumb backpacker?" I didn't know why I was saying these things, what I was accusing him of. My accusations stopped him from trying to convince me otherwise. He appeared on the rooftop soon after, and I threatened to call the cops. He said he'd left his headphones in the room. I nervously but angrily stomped down the stairs and led him into the room, hoping to get rid of him. It worked. No headphones, instead he'd left his silver necklace that he never took off in the bathroom. With it in hand, he brushed quickly past me as I stood in the hall. Pieces. I sat in the room and broke down briefly before spurring into action. I did a quick internet search. I hated the generalizations I was suddenly making as I searched African gangs in Thailand. Drug smuggling was their area, with some forming partnerships with Thai women and using them, sometimes unwittingly, to smuggle drugs into their home countries on the African continent. I remembered Almami asking me about my parents' names and how they were spelt, going so far as to suggest I type it into my phone notes app. which I innocently did and showed him. He had friends in Sydney. He'd taken a lot of interest in my flights. He'd wanted to know how far from Sydney I lived, driving distance. There were other lies he'd told me during the week, plus excuses to not visit him at the gen markets that suddenly came into sharp focus. There was no benefit of the doubt left. I was no longer putting everything down to a difference in culture. Timing. I pulled myself together and messaged Sammy. Whatever time it was in Russia, he thankfully replied. I texted that I thought I'd just escaped a drug groom situation with a Thai league player. He doubted the suggestion, saying that no player would risk their opportunity like that, unless they weren't a league player. Sammy got Almami's full name off me and looked him up while I waited. I'd searched before, but Sammy knew where to look properly for Thai league players' profiles. He was laughing at me in emojis when he told me that Almami hadn't been registered for 4 years. He soon changed his tune when I said I could be in danger here. We both decided that moving hotels early in the morning was the way to go. Sammy left me with a haunting text. He didn't hang out with other Africans in Thailand because he'd heard some of them were dangerous. Action. Bangkok is very quiet early in the morning, and I felt unseen as I beat a hasty retreat to the ferry, then the train, to the Delta outskirts. I sat on the bench in my new hotel room and watched the comings and goings of everyone below. It was a totally Thai neighbourhood, no foreigners except me. I was now safe enough to ruminate on what could have been my fate. Despite not having a clue as to how these things worked, I theorised that I would have been a mule. I would have been held last night and tonight, my stomach emptied at some stage and forced to ingest packages of drugs. The necklace would have been his way to get front counter staff to allow him into the hotel room and get my things. I'd had my passport on me. Almami had always insisted I do so. Almami had also insisted that he'd be taking me to the airport. That probably hadn't been a lie. Someone would have met me at Sydney Airport. I would have been strongly advised before I left that if I was busted at customs, giving up their identities would spell danger for my family. Almami had that info now. Journey. I allowed myself some heartbreak tears during the night. The feelings dried up with the tears. No love lost since it wasn't there in the first place. The morning found me still in shock but on my wits as I travelled back into Don Mueang Airport. I kept my phone on airplane mode the whole time. There was a crazy movie cliche moment when the motorcycle taxi to the airport got a flat tyre on the freeway. I felt like a sitting duck as the driver and I waved down another. I couldn't miss this flight. On arrival in Sydney, I realised airplane mode may not be enough, so factory reset my phone in case of a tracking device. Dramatic mid-flight thoughts had me remembering when Almami had handled my phone at one stage. Why? Despite their best intentions, unfortunately it happens. The friends I retreated to in Sydney couldn't believe I got myself into that situation. Another I recounted the story to had disbelief and suggested I misread the situation. There was no questions in my mind. My instincts were strong. I knew my hopes for this affair to turn out successfully had overridden my usual skepticism. I gave them their space for opinions, knowing it was hard to put into words the strong sense of survival I'd felt on crowded Khao San Road that night. I didn't blame them. It was a natural reaction, like mine. Validation. It came in the form of a couple of friends I spent time with weeks later. I was reticent to retell the story. I didn't need any more blame or disbelief. Interestingly, they'd both had dealings with the underworld and neither doubted my instincts. It was finally time to reflect on my feelings of foolishness. Don't, they both said. You stood up to some heavy people and saved yourself. Be proud that you had street smarts. So I allowed myself some self-congratulatory relief. Amongst it, I thought not of Almami, but of the Myanmar guy. I like to think he knew what he was doing when he suddenly broke away. I wanted to believe that these men were criminals through desperation and survival, and maybe integrity shone through occasionally. And once I let myself remember that time Almami sat on the bed in some hotel room we were in, watching me dressing for the day. He had such sadness in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Helpless. I had to investigate more to stop from feeling like this. What if I could find some useful evidence? I found Almami's Instagram account. He'd given me one, but on further search I found several more. No doubt bait for other victims. This was a more personal, up-to-date feed that didn't just feature pics of his league playing career. There were pics of him flying back to Guinea for a holiday, which he'd mentioned during that ill-fated week. Several Thai women had left messages of luck on the post, some of whom had African partners. What caught my eye were pics of him boarding the plane. The taker had framed the pic only on his stomach, cutting out his head and lower body, an unusual choice. So Al-Mami probably smuggled also. This could be how he effortlessly rationalised trapping people into the desperate, dangerous act that gave him a livelihood in a country so far from home. He would have had a family to support. Hopeless. I had no proof, only my instincts and theories. If my story was taken seriously by authorities, to stop it from happening again, and who knows, to help innocently incarcerated victims currently sitting anywhere in the world, there's so many others willing to take Al-Mami's place in the chain. It's as unstoppable as the hopeless desire for unrealistic love. Moving. I'm still stuck with my dream of living in another country. I don't want to be here. We're all stuck now. There's really nothing else to do but get to the bottom of the loneliness that's kept me on the run for so long. It's finally time to sort that shit out, I guess.